The apartment I lived in until last year was in the shape of a U. It was a 3-story building without an elevator, and I occupied room 204. From my own entrance, I could see room 201 in front of me. Room 201 was already vacant when I moved in. I often smoked cigarettes at the front door in the middle of the night, partly because I didn't want to make the room too dirty. I often smoked cigarettes at the front door. Some people would look at me uncomfortably if they found out. So I usually smoked cigarettes at the front door in the middle of the night. I was having a smoke around 1 a.m. that day. I found something strange in the window next to the front door of room 201, which you can see in front of you. At first I thought it was just a whitish stain. As I got closer and looked closer, it looked like a handprint about the size of a child. Probably a neighbor's kid came in and took advantage of the empty room to deface the window. I thought to myself, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I ran my finger casually over the stain, but it didn't feel like I imagined it would. The stain had been put on from the inside. Oh, it wasn't the neighborhood kids, this was someone cleaning up or something. I went back to my room that day. A few days later, I had forgotten all about the bill. One day, I went out the front door to smoke again. I suddenly noticed something strange when I looked toward room 201. The bills were getting bigger. No, it's not quite like it's getting bigger. It was like he had his hand pressed down on it and shifted it sideways with force. The handprint was spread out so that it flowed sideways. I couldn't help but look at it, thinking, there's an unbelievable vendor. The door to room 203 opened and a man named Mr. Tanaka, who lived there, appeared. Oh no, he saw me smoking. I turned around and stuffed my cigarette into the portable ashtray, unable to look back due to the awkwardness of the situation. I heard a voice from behind me saying, ha ha ha, no, please don't worry about it. When I turned around and said, excuse me, Mr. Tanaka quietly approached me and whispered. He whispered to me, oh, it's getting bigger, isn't it? He spoke to me. Oh. Do you think so? There were some unbelievable vendors, weren't there? A contractor? What is it? What do you mean? What do you mean? I thought so too, so I asked the landlord when I met him the other day. But he said that the cleaning inside has already been done. What? If that's the case, is it still a prank? But all the locks are supposed to be closed. I asked him to take a look at the room, but he refused, saying that it was dirty from the start. The landlord, perhaps because of his age, has become very difficult to see. Then, what is it? I started to think with a difficult look on my face, and he must have sensed the subtle atmosphere. He said, oh, I said something strange at this time of night. I'm sorry. I'm going to the convenience store. He went down the stairs. I sensed a somewhat unusual atmosphere in that room, so I called out to Mr. Sato, an acquaintance of my friend. Mr. Sato is neither a psychic nor a psychic as often seen in this thread. He was just a person who liked such things, read more books on such things than other people, and visited such mysterious places more often than other people. He is normally dressed and has a calm personality. I felt embarrassed to make a big deal out of it, but I wanted to talk to someone about it. I just thought, if that's the case, then maybe Ms. Sato. When Sato-san heard what I had to say, she immediately wanted to take a look, so I brought her over to my house on Sunday evening. I was worried that someone might pass by because he was looking at the handprint so intently. This one looks like it wants to get out, doesn't it? From this room. Do you want to get out? After refusing to answer, Mr. Sato began to speak. Someone wants to get out of this room. Until now, the people who used to live here have been taking some kind of measures, so I guess they can't move. When the previous occupant left this room. When the previous occupant moved out of this room, he would have left some of his treatment behind, so the guy still can't move freely. But I think that something must have created a gap only at this window. Why did the previous occupant want to lock it in? Who the hell is that guy anyway? I don't know. Then, I asked the landlord if he would like to come inside with me. But he politely declined. I don't have that kind of courage. I don't think I have the courage to do so. Even an amateur like me can feel that much. He quickly started to go down the stairs. I hurried after him and bought him dinner outside as a thank you for coming all the way here. Mr. Sato is very knowledgeable about such topics, and I listened to his stories until late. On my way home. It was quite late, so I ran back to my apartment and met Mr. Tanaka in front of his mailbox on the first floor. He said he was on his way home from work. It must be hard to stay up this late on a Sunday. Oh, well. We walk up the stairs together, talking about how hard it is to work so late on a Sunday. It was late at night, and the scene around us was very quiet. I couldn't bring myself to look at room 201. It was the same for Mr. Tanaka. We exchanged a few unimportant conversations as we both looked straight ahead. We get upstairs. Okay. Oh, yes. And we part ways. I pulled the key out of my pocket and was about to open the door, but I couldn't help but notice Sato-san's story from earlier in the evening. I thought, I don't mind if I just look at him for a little while. And so I slowly turned around. I turned around slowly and saw Mr. Tanaka's profile first. Mr. Tanaka was staring at a point with his eyes wide open and frozen in place. His gaze was probably on room 201. Fearfully, I turned my head toward room 201. Something is wrong. It's open. Yes? The window is open. I looked at the window and sure enough, it was open. That was not the only reason Mr. Tanaka and I could not take our eyes off it. Something was about to come out. It was not in the shape of a person as we had initially imagined. It was black, small, slimy. It was like a reptile. It was trying to crawl out through the window. Oh no. If this thing finds me, I'm in trouble. I instinctively felt it. I hurriedly searched for the key in my pocket. Mr. Tanaka was already trying to insert the key into the keyhole. It was stuck and would not come out of his pocket. I pulled his hand with all my might, and the key slipped out of his hand and fell over the fence to the bottom. To get downstairs, we had to go down the stairs. To do so, I had to head toward room 201. I didn't have the courage. When I heard a sticky sound, I turned around and saw that the guy had already gone out of the window. I couldn't help myself and slumped down on the floor. Just as Mr. Tanaka was about to unlock the door and open it to let me in. The guy, who had seemed to be moving very slowly until now, crawled on the ground with tremendous force. Just before the door was about to close, he slipped into Mr. Tanaka's room. It must have been a blind spot from Mr. Tanaka. The door closed and I heard footsteps slamming into the back room. After that, there was nothing but silence. I remained motionless for a while. After that, I did not see Mr. Tanaka anymore. But that did not mean that there was anything wrong in the room or that he was making strange noises. It may have just been that the timing with me did not match. I went to report this to Mr. Sato. I didn't know what to do. Mr. Sato said it was probably just a coincidence that Mr. Tanaka was chosen. Because they were close. I think that's about it. At any rate, you were lucky. I don't know what he is. I don't know what he is, but from the looks of him, he's not a decent guy by any stretch of the imagination. I also don't know what he plans to do with Mr. Tanaka. Is it right now, or will they take their time? Anyway, I think it would be best not to get involved with Mr. Tanaka anymore. The best thing would be to hear from the former residents. Hearing this, I tried talking to the landlord, but he said he couldn't talk about such things due to privacy laws. Mr. Sato gently refused to have anything more to do with the matter. After that, I took advantage of the company's offer of a transfer and left the apartment. That was many years ago. I wondered if Mr. Tanaka was still in that apartment, or if the apartment still existed in the first place. I am curious, but I can't bring myself to go check. This is the end of this story. Thank you for listening to the end. This is a story about an experience my senior mountaineering friends and I recently had during a mountain climbing trip in the Hotaka foothills of the Northern Alps. We were planning to take a traverse route from Yarrigatake, located in the north of the Hotaka Fens, along the ridgeline to Okuotaka. On the route, there is a V-shaped rock ridge called Okillet that connects Minamidake and Kitahotaka. This route is one of the most difficult of all the trails for ordinary climbers, and every year there are many deaths due to slips and falls. The sun was peeking out that morning, but by the time we reached Mount, the rain came 3 hours earlier than forecast. We put on our rain gear and tied each other with ropes. The Quillet began with a steep descent with ladders and chains attached to the rock face, and then a 200-meter descent, up and down, to the col, the lowest part of the Quillet. Within an hour of setting foot on the rock, the wind and rain intensified and began to beat down on us mercilessly. We had the option of turning back, but we had enough energy and wanted to cross the Quillet by the end of the day. A rocky hill, dimly visible in the mist, stood in our way, but we turned our feet to it. As we began to climb the rocky mountain, clinging to the rock face, we heard a faint male voice overhead. It is past climbing season and the weather is like this. While thinking that there were others who were rushing ahead and fond of things besides us, I was dancing my heart out at the prospect of meeting a mountaineer I hadn't seen in a long time. By the time we neared the summit, the man's voice was clearly audible, but the sight I saw at the summit was a letdown. There was not a soul to be seen, only a narrow, sheer ridge. The route we had just taken was narrow enough for a single person to pass, and it was impossible to pass each other. The ridge was cut off at a sharp angle, leaving only a few footholds, and the fog below us was sucking us in. "Hey, didn't I hear a man's voice just now?" "You too?" "I heard him too." "I fell." "No way, right?" "No way." "You heard it earlier, and you didn't sound like you fell." The senior's expression was a mixture of anxiety and doubt. "I'm sure it was just an empty ear. Let's get out of here." I didn't think it was an empty ear, but I didn't want to argue. As we were passing over the ridge, relying on the few footholds we had on the rocky cliffs, where slipping would mean instant death, the wind was blowing up from below us and we were hit with the following words. "Go-o-woo." A weird sound resonated from the mountain. I couldn't suppress my goosebumps as I heard the sound of the wind, but it sounded like the cry of thousands of other, unworldly beings. "Concentrate," he said. "The wind will drive you. Never move your body away from the mountainside." Perhaps sensing this, I felt reassured by the words of encouragement my senpai gave me. 2 hours after stepping into the Quillet, we passed the lowest col and approached the difficult part of the ascent to Kitahotaka Dake. The wall-like ascent was evidently a climb that had required advanced climbing techniques before the pins were put in place. My senior climbed ahead of me and I secured him at the bottom. After the senior climber completed the ascent, I put on the rope of the securer who had come down and put my hand on the pin. When I reached the middle of the climb, a hollow male voice whispered in my ear, "Hey! Hey!" The blood in my body froze. The next thing I knew, someone caught my right foot and I slipped. "Hey, you okay? Are you okay?" If it weren't for the securing rope, I would have lost my life. I was just about to answer the voice of my older colleague. "Help me!" A voice rang in my ear and I shuddered. I will never forget that empty, lifeless voice. Even now, when I imagine it, I cannot suppress my goosebumps. That day, we decided to give up Okuotaka and stay at a lodge on Kitahotaka. I told this story to a gentleman I met there, a mountain veteran in his 50s, and he said he had experienced the same thing. He had heard voices in places where no one was supposed to be, and had a nightmare that a woman caught his leg in the lodge, and his companions had the exact same dream. We were advised to get off the mountain tomorrow, which we did. In the morning, there was still rain and a thick fog, but as we descended to the bottom of the mountain, the sky began to clear. Before we descended, We visited the inner shrine of Hotaka Shrine, which is a memorial to the victims of the disaster, to give thanks for our lives and pray for the souls of those who had lost their lives. The next morning after returning home safely, the phone rang with a call from a senior colleague. "Hey, did you see the news on TV just now? Did something happen?" The news was reporting that a man had slipped and died early in the morning on the north side of Mount Kita Hotaka, the route we had taken 2 days earlier. Some of the victims in the northern Alps may have been taken. I know it is not realistic, but after an experience like that, I can't help but think so. This concludes this story. I bought my first cell phone and was impressed by the unknown device. I was happy to register my college friends and part-timers. About a month later, I got a wrong voicemail. A voice that sounded about the same age as my mother.
"Yuki-chan, your mother asked me to record something today, but I recorded the wrong thing by mistake. I'm sorry, but I bought your favorite cake."
It was so cheerful and cheerful. It might have been kinder to tell her that she made a mistake, but I didn't feel like telling her. But I didn't feel like going out of my way to tell her, and it was kind of funny, so I left it as it was. Maybe that's why I get the wrong voicemail once or twice a month.
Like, "I'm going out for my grandpa's memorial service tomorrow, so I won't be here at night." Or, "Traffic is a bit congested, so I'll probably be home around dusk."
It was nothing important. Then, about 6 months later, I finally realized that I didn't need the voicemail anymore. I wondered if she finally realized her mistake, but then I got her first voicemail in a while. I thought he must have realized his mistake, but then I got his first voicemail in a long time.
"Yuki-chan, where are you? Why aren't you answering the phone? Your father is worried about you. Your father is worried about you. You need to talk to me about anything, don't you?"
She said. I got a little scared. I'd been neglecting him for so long, and I was too scared to tell him it was a mistake. Then the content started getting crazier and crazier.
"Yuki-chan, why aren't you answering your phone? I know you're listening to my voicemail. Pick up the phone now. Yuki-chan, I know you're there. You really are a nasty girl. Hurry up and pick up. Come on, come on. Come on. Yuki-chan, hey. Why won't you get out? I won't forgive you, mother, really."
I was getting more and more scared, so I left it alone without asking. The reason I was able to leave it alone for some reason was because I thought that they just knew my number, and I didn't think much of it. But one day when I was at home, my cell phone rang in front of me. The LCD on that phone said, "Wrong aunt." I had registered it as such, but it was from you-know-who. I had been working part-time or in other situations where I couldn't pick up the phone, so I was there when the call came in for the first time. And after the call tone, it switches to an answering
machine. "Why didn't you answer? But it's okay now, Mom, I understand." I thought she had calmed down a bit and was listening to her gentle way of saying things. "There's an uncle who lives in the same neighborhood as you, right? Do you remember him? I asked him to look things up for me, he knows a lot about that kind of thing. Yuki-chan is in Osaka now, Mom, I finally found out. I'm taking Friday off to go there. Don't worry, I'll go alone. Stay home and I'll buy you your favorite cake."
The phone rang off the hook with a loud clunk. I was truly horrified. I don't know if they really know where they're going. I don't know if they really know where I am, but at least they know it's in Osaka. I wanted to laugh it off as a coincidence or some kind of joke. But the voice on the phone was clearly convinced of something. I could tell he was planning to come here on Friday to settle the score. I wanted to throw my phone away, but there was no point in doing that. There's no time or money to get out of my apartment. Even if I left the house that Friday and made it through the day, what would I do after that? Would I be able to respond to them and say I don't know them? Will they really come here in the first place? I regretted neglecting the wrong number until now. I was embarrassed, but I felt as if I was about to start crying. It was Wednesday when I received the call. The next day, I didn't go to college or work, but stayed home alone. I thought about talking to my friends about it, but I felt like the more I talked to them, the more I felt like I was opening a wound. I thought it wasn't just a wrong number, but something unusual was coming to me through the phone. I could only think that something unusual was coming to me through the phone. The next day, on the night of Friday, my cell phone rang. I am the brother of the woman who was always making the wrong calls to your place. The caller was a man with a quiet manner. First of all, I apologize for calling the wrong number over a long period of time. I could only respond with a huh. At this unexpected statement. My sister has been mentally and physically ill since the death of her daughter, Yukiko, and I believe that is why she has done this. Today, I heard from her caretaker and finally found out that she had been calling him. I'm going to cancel her cell phone and I'm sorry for everything. The man apologized to me without asking me why I had neglected him. I really wanted to ask him a lot of questions, but there was a dark feeling on the other end of the phone. It was enough to make me think that I shouldn't get involved anymore. No, I'm sorry, he said, and hung up the phone. I was so scared that I canceled my cell phone the next day and stayed at a friend's house on Fridays and Saturdays. 3 months later, I moved into a new apartment with the money from my part-time job. I still had a lot of questions, but I tried not to think about them anymore. Whenever I talk about scary stories and such, I always think about it. Ghosts, curses, and other such things are all, in the end, the result of human emotions. And it's the living people who are the scariest. At least, that's what I've been thinking ever since that incident. This concludes this story.